Hi, everybody. Just letting everyone in here.
Hi, Miss Donna.
Hi. Cool. Let's go ahead and jump into our attendance check question. It is September 10th. Welcome to gonna be our last live pre-calculus class because y'all are switching. Our next class is next week. So that's just something to process here. Our attendance check question is right on the board. What is the best kind of sandwich? And a bit of ideas, different types of sandwiches, PB and J, all these other types. Go ahead and put that into the chat so I could take your attendance down, please. All right, let's see what we have. Okay. Cool. So let's look at these sandwiches. Chicken sandwich, bacon, egg, and cheese. It's like a breakfast one. BLT, turkey, chicken sandwich. That's epic. With avocado. Yeah, avocado. Any sandwich with avocado is the best, honestly. All right, let's see what else we have. BLT, bacon, sausage, egg, cheese. Pepperoni, that's a new one. Actually, I used to get that back in the day at Subway. I would get like the For those who just came in, we have our check-in question for our attendance here. So, what's the best kind of sandwich? All right, some avocado sandwich, just straight up avocado, yes. Ham sandwich, pesto chicken sandwich with jalapeno chips, spicy chicken, and BLT. Okay, awesome. Salami sandwich. I don't know what a glizzy, ultimate glizzy sandwich is. All right, cool. Let me go ahead and check who I have or who I don't have more so. And please correct me if I'm wrong because I quickly tried to look through here and mark who's not here and who's here, but I don't have Kalia. I don't have Jayla, Ernesto, Jimena. And then I know about Ariana. She won't be here because of internet issues. Angel, Amara, and also KK. So that's who I'm missing today. So again, if you're friends with them, okay, sorry, Jimena, you're here, my bad. Apologize for missing you. I know I seen your name writing a sandwich. Sorry. All right, I got you. Oh, and Ernesto's here. Subway. Okay. Cool. So let me just double run that back, y'all. So this is who I don't have. Kalia, Jayla, Angel Medina, Amara, and KK. So that's who I don't have now. I'm gonna go ahead and update Power School, but please let your friends know if you're friends with those who I just mentioned to please, you know, come on by so that they're not marked absent. It is our last pre-calculus class, and we're going to go over, how to do our little mini final today. All right. Cool. Thank you all for that check-in. Awesome. I mean, I hope you all got to eat lunch so it's not torture talking about sandwiches. But if you didn't, I mean, you're home. You could always just get up, make yourself a sandwich as long as you're, here with us. But great. So here's our agenda, everybody. So we did attendance. We had our little check-in. We're going to start talking today about how to do and how to think about the summative assessment, again, which is our mini final. This is going to be tying up our module. There's two parts to it, which I'm going to go over today, part 1 and part 2. And then we're going to have some time and some space for any clarifying questions that you might have on the summative. And then hopefully get to starting on the summative together if we have time. So the summative is due tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. After you submit the summative on Friday, right? What I'm going to do is for whoever submitted, I'll be grouping you up into groups so that you can look at each other's summative, give each other feedback, maybe make revisions on your own. And the last resubmission will be Sunday. But to be honest, you could resubmit as many times as you want to me if you want to improve your score. Because remember, this will be graded on accuracy. That means emerging, developing, proficient, or advanced. So you definitely want to focus your energy on this, especially if you're missing some assignments. This is the thing that boosts you up for sure. Okay, let's prepare for how we're going to look at the summative, everyone. So this is what you need to have open. I need you to open up the Big Ideas Packet, Unit 1. So for those of you who did the assignment, you're going to open up the one that you did. If you did not do the assignment, it's all here on Google Classroom. You're going to just open it up. And I need you to open up the summative task. So if you go to Google Classroom, you click on classwork here that I circled in red. These are the two things I need you to open up. It's in Unit 1, Week 3, which is our last week in the module. So let me give you all a minute to please open up these two things that you need to have opened so that we can do our next part.
Do you want us to make a copy of the submissive task or do you just want us to have it open?
Perfect. Yes, you definitely want to copy, especially because we will be annotating and making comments on that. Great question. Okay, great. So now that y'all have these two things open, and if you don't, please get them open, but how do we do this? Let's go. What's going to happen right now is you're going to take 10 minutes to read and annotate the summative. And annotate, how we do it online is you just highlight, make a comment. But you're going to have a specific way that you're commenting on this. You're going to be commenting on the summative based on which big ideas connect to the questions that you are being asked to do. So just deeply read what the instructions are saying right here. Because you're going to have to prepare to answer the following afterward, because we're going to have a Padlet where y'all are going to type in there. You're going to prepare to answer this. For summative part 1, what big ideas will we need and why? super important to address the why. For summative part 2, what big ideas will we need and why? So again, big emphasis, on the why. So before y'all get started, let me just show you what I mean by part 1, part 2. So first off, yes, you should make a copy of the summative task. And I'm in period 1. Let me go to your period. Again, you should always be going to classwork because the stream is kind of just like a lot of assignments posted on there. But if you go to classwork, it's all organized for you by week. And that way you know what we did and in which week. So it's just easier if you go to classwork and then you're able to easily find what's the most recent thing. So again, you should have the big ideas packet open. And again, there's a copy for you there if you did not do it. And then you're going to open up the summative task as well. So you should have 2 of these open. Once you're here, you're going to make your copy. And then you're going to be starting to annotate it according to what big ideas you need to do this summative. So let me talk about what I mean about part 1, part 2. So there are 2 parts to the summative task. Here is part 1. It's labeled. And if you read the situation here, it's Sean. She's a small business owner. She's making cloth masks. There is this rising issue of littering disposable masks that's happening. So this small business owner that's trying to make these cloth masks, and she has a formula that gives an output of the order of masks. So you're gonna go ahead and read that. That's part 1, and there are certain questions following up to part 1. Then if you keep scrolling down, you're going to hit part 2. Part 2 is about a different situation. Part 2 is talking about this, like you want to get these large, good quality hand sanitizer packs from the store that you frequent. You get these coupon in the mail, but then you go to the store and you figure out that everything's 25% off. So it's going to ask you to kind of create some equations there. So that's for part 2, and then that would be the end of it. So again, the summative is broken up into 2 separate parts, part 1, and then you have your part 2. I want you to just deeply read the questions you're being asked, and I want you to make comments based on what big ideas, and you could be specific, like big idea number 1, big idea number 2. Which big ideas are we using for this task or for this problem for part 1 and 2? And there's a comment in the chat. So yeah, we're gonna get to specific questions about that after we do this portion for sure. Let's table the help on part 2. That's gonna be for the 3rd part of what we're gonna be doing today. So for sure, we're gonna talk about that. And then remind me if I forget it, but at the end of, after we do our Padlet and stuff, let's talk about how to start on that. But for now, does everyone understand the directions of what we're doing? You're gonna, for the next 10 minutes, read and annotate the summative. But when you annotate it, I want you to make connections on which big ideas connect to the questions you're being asked. Like, I think this is related to big idea, blah, blah, because. Make sure you put your why. Again, you're going to do this for part 1 and for part 2. Does anyone have any questions about what we're doing now for the next 10 minutes? Cool. If we don't have any questions, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, this that I highlighted in yellow right here is what you want to keep in mind as you're annotating the summative. So keep these 2 things in mind because we're going to have a Padlet where you're going to put your ideas down. This will be for credit. You will have your name when you make your comment on the Padlet. So just please make sure you pay attention to the part I just highlighted in yellow right here on this slide. All right, y'all, I'm gonna give you your 10 minutes to do this independently, and then we're gonna come together back in 10 minutes, y'all. All right, everyone, welcome back. I hope you got sufficient time to look and read through the summative as well as annotate it. Try to make some connections with what big ideas the questions are asking you to connect with, because everything that you're being asked to do in the summative is going to be connected back to our big ideas. It's an always sort of thing. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on summative just part one, the one about Sean and her masks. Right now, let's just refocus ourselves to just part one, because what we're going to be doing next is a Padlet for part one. So for summative part one, what big ideas will we need and why? You're going to take a few minutes on a Padlet to answer this question, and don't forget the why. Also, please make sure you write your name to receive participation and credit in the Padlet. So I'm going to go ahead and get the Padlet for you all. It's right here. We're period 3. And I'm going to put it into the chat. So go ahead and click on the Padlet. You should be able to edit it. I double checked that. But what you should see is like a green chalkboard looking thing. And it says for summative part 1, that's only the first part, the one about the woman making the masks, the cloth masks. What big ideas will we need and why? How you add comments is you go to the bottom right hand corner right here. You see this plus sign. You click on it and your comment pops up like that. I'm going to go ahead and throw mine away, but you're going to go ahead and start typing. Yes, good. We have Simia there. So I'm going to give you all a few minutes to go ahead and write your comment in on what big ideas will we need for this portion of the summative for part 1. Again, make sure your name is on there if it's not showing up. Awesome. We got more people on there. Again, you want to make sure that you are participating. Get your name in there so I could give you some credit. We are in our last days of pre-calculus, and I want to give as much credit as we can. So I'm going to go ahead and give you all a minute, and I'll go back to it in a second. I'm just going to have the directions up. So I'll give you all a minute to write down what big ideas do you think part 1 connects with. And we're going to take a look at what y'all write. All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and check out what we're typing in there. Right, so we have big idea number 4. Again, if you want your credit, make sure you continue it. So and why is what we need to get full credit on this. You got to put the and why. And that's also going to be true for your summative, by the way. If you don't have your justifications, I can't give you credit for it. You got to include what did you do and why. So keep going on these, y'all. I'm going to circle the why many, many times. Okay. All right, so we have, I would say number 1, because we do have to substitute as well as graph to solve the rest of the problem. That's true. So I agree that big idea number 1 for sure will be used because this first problem right here about the masks and this function that's given to us, it is a function. So we do need to know a little bit about functions and how to graph them. So I agree with that. Next, let's see over here. Analyze the problem and make sense of possible inputs. Figuring out how many masks 10 employees make a day. Figure out how many need to make 120 and 64 orders. And then figure out any equations. Lastly, the equations and so forth. Let me also clear this. Let's see. So how do you upload the comment? Your comment is already actually there. I saw, Simi, I saw it earlier. Because it moves around each time someone adds it. Again, for those that say anonymous, make sure that you have your name on there. It shows up as anonymous if you're not logged into your email. So just make sure you add your name. Yeah, I see yours, Simi. It's down here. It just moves each time someone adds a new post. Good. Actually, I like let me point out what Simia wrote. Where is it at? Oh, there we go. We're going to use big idea number 2 because we have to look at the possible domains, IDK. So actually, you're definitely right, because if you look at summative 1, right, they're asking you about state a domain that makes sense. And if you look back at your big ideas packet, big idea number 2 does talk about like restricting the domain and so forth. So that's actually a good thing that you pointed out. All right. Let's see what other ideas we have. Big ideas number 2, because domain. See, again, the domain part is being mentioned. That's totally, you all are on the right track. And then a question is the amount of orders each worker would make. Big idea number 4, because how the equations and graphs are similar and different. So I would have to actually take a look at what big ideas number 4 is. Let me just open up the big ideas packet. So I could see what big idea number 4 is. Because I remember big idea 1 and 2, it has all to do with functions, domain and range. Big idea number 4. Okay, making sure equivalent expressions, and then problem solving skills. Yes, that could totally be related. Okay. All right, let's see what else we have. So using big idea number 3 and number 2, because we need to see what X values we can use and found the amount of masks, make a certain time. Awesome, true. Okay, let's see what's new. Big idea number 4, I think that's the one I just looked up. Yep, equivalent expressions. Let's see what else. Okay, a lot of us are kind of in agreement about which big ideas we'll need to use. Jose put 4, 2, and 1 because we have to use algebraic manipulation. Yes. And input numbers, you get an output and to find domain. Totally, I agree with that. Awesome. I'm trying to see what else is different here because it looks like we're all in agreement about the big ideas. I see 1, 2, and 4 being mentioned a lot. Okay, cool. So let me just also bring your attention down to here, to part E of the summative part 1. Part E says that Sean likes to save money. Save time and plan ahead, not money. Save time and plan ahead. So she wants to program her computer to do the opposite thing. She wants to take the number of orders that need to be filled and then assign the correct numbers of employees. So she doesn't want this format where it's P equals 2n squared minus 8, because P is orders and N is employees. She wants an equation where she puts employees and it gives, and the secondary variable would be the orders. So when you're switching the domain and range the way she'd like to in part E, what big idea are we actually talking about here? And for this one, let's use the chat because I didn't see it come up in the Padlet there. So that's why I'm asking this follow-up question. If you look specifically at part E here, she wants to program her computer so that it actually takes the orders that needs to be filled out And it gives you correct numbers of employees. So it's doing the opposite effect now. What equation does she need to program her computer? So what big idea would we be looking at? Or what concept would we want for this part? For this one, y'all can use the chat. All right, so Jose put number 6. Let's check it out. Let's see number 6 relates to this part. Let's find what big idea number 6 is. Oh, big idea number 6 is about inverse function. So the inverse of a function undoes the function rule. Some of you had questions like, what is the function rule? If you go to Summative Unit 1, Part 1, this right here, any equation or function equation is function rule. They call it a rule. So basically anything that undoes that will give you the inverse. Another way to think about inverses, if y'all remember, switching the domain and range. So yes, Jose, you're correct. Part E of Part 1 of the summative right here is talking about inverse functions. You actually have to find the inverse of the original equation to get your new function here for part E. So before y'all forget that, y'all should make a comment here. Find the inverse. That's big idea number 6. So thank you so much for that contribution, Jose. So again, part E is about inverses, y'all. Make sure we, that's what it's asking you to do. It wants you to give us the new equation. So you got to find the inverse of this one here. She wants to do the opposite effect. And sorry. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and move on from part 1, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next Padlet, which is Padlet number 2, which is going to be about the second part of the summative, which is down here, which is about the sanitizer pack. So now let's look at this one, and we're going to try and see what big ideas does this connect to. So just as a synthesis, for part 1, we connected to big ideas 1, 2, 4, and also 6 because of inverses for part 1. For part 2, think about what big ideas we'll need, and I'm going to give you all the new Padlet for part 2. So this was part 1. Here's the new Padlet. And it's there into the chat. Go ahead and open up the new Padlet and start jotting down your ideas. Make sure you put your name so that you get your credit. Let me show you what it should look like when you click on it. It should look like popsicles. Again, in order to write a comment on this, all you got to do is click on this plus sign at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, and you should be able to make a comment. So we should all go to Padlet number 2. And right now we're thinking about, for part 2, what big ideas connect for the summative part 2. Awesome. A few of us are starting to write in what big ideas we think summative part 2 will need for summative part 2. So I'm gonna give you all a moment and then we'll go back to it. Just gonna have this slide up so you know what we're doing right now. All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and head over to Padlet number 2. So we could check out what you all think. What big ideas are we going to be needing? And again, make sure that you put your name by your comments so that you can get your credit. So for part 2, it's the one about the large sanitizer packs, and you get like this coupon and there's this discount at the store. So we have big idea number 1 will help us because we'll need to know what y would equal. True. We'll need to know what y would equal. That means we need to kind of create a function to represent the discounts and the coupon. I think big idea number 5, because we have to plug a function into another. So let's look at what big idea number 5 is. Big idea number 5, you can use functions we're already familiar with as building blocks to make new functions. I totally and completely agree with you there. We are going to be using big idea number 5 for this problem because for 1 and 2, you're going to be creating 2 basic equations. But for number 3, you're going to create a new equation. And yes, that's going to involve plugging a function into it, into another function, and which is all about composition. So yes, this is big idea number 5. Awesome that it came up. Yes, number 1 will come up again because we're talking about functions. Anything you need to know about functions, you would reference big idea number 5. Make sure that you all put a because after your statement. Super important, because that's also going to be important for your summative. You want to include your justifications, the and why. Oh, so Jazane, and I hope I'm saying your name right, Jazane. I like your comment. It says big idea number 5, example 3. So she's being very specific in which example. I'm gonna go back and see which example she's talking about. So big idea number 5 is right here. Here's example 1, example 2. Example 1, example 2, they're like basically showing you how to like plug in. It's like a basic example, but I like that Jazane mentioned example 3 because this is actually how you use composition with word problems, which is what you're going to be doing in summative part 2. This is a key example. That's why I kind of put that little hint there. You're going to definitely be looking at example 3, big idea number 5. Awesome that you brought that up. All right, great. A lot of us are in agreements. Big idea 1 and 6. And 6 inverses the equation. So let's look if we have inverses. So right now I see that we're going to be creating a new function. It could be possible that they're asking for inverses. I don't see yet where they're asking us to like switch x and y. So I'm not exactly sure if we have inverses, but if you find some, I mean, that would be cool. Not saying that there isn't any, but it's not a way I've thought of yet, but that's okay. All right, let's see. Big idea because we would need to know. Good. Number 1. So it looks like we're all in agreement here. So a lot of 1s and 5s. We have some 6s here. And if you see some inverse stuff happening here, I mean, feel free to justify and explain it. But I definitely agree with number 5 because number 5 is all about creating new equations, and that's what you'll be doing for sure for the summative part 2. Awesome, y'all. Thank you for your ideas on here. And again, notice how you're always going to go back to the big ideas packet. This is like the holy grail of what's going to help you for the summative. This is all the information you need. Basically, if you don't understand something from the big ideas packet, that's where you want to get some clarification on. Awesome, y'all. Let's go ahead and transition from the Padlet. Again, you do have access to what y'all wrote in the Padlets, because if you access my slides, and if you go to the notes section, I put down period 1, period 3. You could even take a look at what period 1 said and how it's similar or different to what you all said. So it's on the slides if you go to the notes section down here. Let's go ahead and transition from that. Now what I'm going to do is summative task questions / clarification. So you could go ahead and exit out from the Padlet. What I'd like you to do right now is to have some time to use the chat or to feel free to unmute yourself to ask any clarifying questions about the task. I can answer, or another student is free to answer in the chat, or they can unmute. So in general, what questions do you have about the task? And I know we already had a question earlier about, let me kind of scroll up and grab that question. Oh yeah, I need help on part 2. Can you do an example for the class? Okay, specifically, what portion of part 2 would you like me to kind of walk us a little bit through? I'm happy to get us started. Of course, I can't give you the answer, but I'm happy to, help y'all get a step in that problem. So if you still have that question, if you want to bring it back up with a little bit of specificness about which part of part 2 you'd like help on. Other than that, I'm opening it up to any other questions. Okay, with number 3. Cool. So let's see. Let me go ahead and go to the summative unit 1. And what we're talking about is how do we do part 3 is the question. So part 3 says write a function. It's a new function. They're calling it h of x that represents how much you would pay if you use the mail coupon first, followed by applying the discount from the store. So let's see. So this one represents the effect of the original coupon. So step 1, first off, in order to do number 3, you have to create an equation for number 1 and number 2. That way you could kind of create the final equation number 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of color code this. And notice, y'all, what I'm borrowing here is already that y'all mentioned that we're going to be using big idea number, it was this one, big idea number 5. You all said that in the Padlet, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm color coding this because I'm preparing for function composition. So that's what I'm doing here. Because whenever you create new expressions, what we talked about in this unit is function compositions. That's how you kind of create and build a new function. So it says it's a new function that represents how much you pay if you use mail coupon first. So mail coupon first. So the part that you do first is always the inner function. So my inner function, mail coupon, which one's mail coupon? Right here. This is the coupon you got in the mail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to bring this down here. Okay. So in my function composition, this is my first portion. This is my innermost because it says I have to do it first. It says I need to use the coupon first. So step 1, that's first. Remember, the innermost goes first. Then the outermost goes next. Then it says followed by the discount at the store. The discount at the store was 25% off. So that means my outside function is the G function. So what I have is this. I'm going to color code that back to green. So this function, once you know what F and G is, you'll be able to create the composition with the way we've been discussing in class. And this new function, we're going to call it H. So we're going to just say whatever this is going to be my H. And that's what they mean when they say create a new function H. You're actually going to be using the functions you created from part 1 and part 2 of this portion. I'm hoping that kind of helps make sense with that question. Just saying, or if anyone has any other clarifying questions on this one. But that's how you would get started on this. Awesome, awesome. I mean, I'll delete this later, but y'all can totally, write this down. Because I definitely want you to like try to figure it out in like creating your new functions and so forth. Let's see if we have any other questions. But all of this is confusing. So you want to make sure you have a specific thing that I could help with, Jaleel. Because that's what I'm opening this time for, is just general, like any other questions that we have. Right now, we just addressed this question, which I'm hoping can be a little bit clarifying to those who had a similar question on it. So yeah, let me know if anyone has any other clarifying questions about the summative. So I can be of support. That's what I want to do. And if there's no other questions, I mean, I could get us started on this portion right here that I definitely want to talk about. If there's no more questions. Oh, there's another question here in the chat. It's done privately. It says, do we pick our own price? And I'm assuming that you're talking about part 2 when you ask that question about the price. So actually, if you read the problem here, the price of the sanitizer pack is right here. Let me highlight that. Do y'all see that? X represents the original cost price of the large sanitizer packs. So when you all create equations, the X is the price, it's the cost. So that was in reference to a question that was asked in private. I hope that helps. So X is the price of the sanitizer packs. All right, so let's go ahead and quickly, we don't have much time, but I kind of wanted to talk about how to get started on part 1, part A of this, where it says state of domain that makes sense. I want to definitely talk about this because not only did y'all mention the fact that domain came up in the Padlet number 1, but I definitely want to quickly get us started on this before we head on out. So it's super important actually because we want to make sure that the domain makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Desmos right now so that we can graph this because it says graph the given function. So totally you could use Desmos to do this. I'm going to go to Desmos, open up the calculator. We're going to put our function p equals 2n squared, and it was -8. So, oops, zoom in a little bit. So this here, this function represents the number of employees and the number of masks that they can produce. Specifically, if you annotate your function here, the P was number of masks, number masks. I can't really write well. Number of masks, and N was number of employees. I'm just gonna put number E, number of employees. So that means here, this x-axis represents N. So I'm gonna label this as N. That's the X is number of employees. The P is up here. Instead of Y, it's P. And P represents the number of masks. So just so you know what we're looking at here. So once you have that clear and labeled, take a look right here. If I have -2, 0, what's that telling me is this, that I have -2 employees make me 0 masks. Now I want to ask this question in the chat. Does this make sense? Can -2 employees make 0 masks? And anyone's free to answer this into the chat. No. No, it does not make sense, right? So this is what it means to pay attention to the domain. This part does not make any sense. You cannot have negative employees, right? And in fact, if you keep clicking right here on your parabola anywhere to the left of 0, it's all of the ends are negative. All of the first coordinate portions are negative. Therefore, none of these on the left-hand side make sense. So what you could do is like just get rid of this. This domain right here, the X or the N in this case, does not make sense. So I'm adjusting my domain, right? And you could keep going. For example, what if I go, let me get rid of right here. So if we look at this, and I'm trying to interpret what it means. So this is N and this is P. So this is saying if I have 0 employees, I make -8 masks. Now, is this part possible? Can 0 employees make -8 masks? No. You guys are right. No. So this whole part doesn't make sense either. Whenever the y is negative, you're going to have something that doesn't make sense. You can't make negative masks. So this whole portion right here does not make sense either. So see how I'm adjusting the domain to make sense in the real world. So actually what you notice is the only domain that makes sense is when X or N, sorry, let's use N because that's the variable for the X now, is when N is greater than or equal to 2. And the reason why that works is because once you hit 2, it makes sense. When I have 2 employees, I make 0 masks, and then so forth, right? If you are at a more advanced level, you could try to deal with the decimal portions, like, hey, can you have a decimal amount of people? But you don't have to go that deep. But for the moment, y'all, how we would adjust the domain for this problem, the domain that makes sense is only when we have more than 2 employees. That's the only time this equation will make sense. And how you write that mathematically is like this. This is how we adjust the domain. N has to be greater than or equal to 2. Again, that means number of employees greater than or equal to 2. Yeah, so that's pretty much all the time I have for the current support. The summative is due tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. After you turn it in on Friday, I'm going to try to put you all into groups so that y'all can look at each other's summative, give some feedback, make even some updates, because your final draft or your final, your final summative with updated corrections is due Sunday. But you definitely want to turn in your complete work for Friday so that we have something to look at. Let me know if anyone has any other questions. Other than that, this is our last live pre-calculus class until the next 3 weeks, and I hope you all have a good day. I am available email through Remind if you need any extra support or have additional questions. You all have a good day. Tomorrow is Friday, right? Yeah, tomorrow's Friday, so you only have advisory tomorrow. And you have the asynchronous thing due, and that's it for tomorrow. So no class tomorrow except for advisory.
Bye, Sedano. Have a good day. See you next module.
Oh my gosh.
Or after that.
Bye, Mr. Dono.
Yeah, you guys can drop by in any office hours, say hi. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. I'll miss this.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. It's only 1 month. It's still gonna feel a long while. All right, bye everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and end this meeting.